We've begun to look at the third of John's responses to the success that he experiences in his ministry, and that is how he deals with this challenge of truth about staying on message. John's message was about fleeing the coming wrath. There was a sense of the focus on an eternal destiny, and he's given us this picture of separating the wheat from the chaff, this cleaning up of the threshing area, where the wheat is being brought into the barn but the chaff is being burned up. John the Baptist's picture here is a bit of a picture of Jesus' mission, the forerunner to the main event. When we go to see gigs, often there's a support band who are warming the crowd up ready for the main event. Their music is getting people whetting their appetite for the music that's to come. And John the Baptist is whetting people's appetite for Jesus coming. And so his message is a foreshadow of the message that the forerunner is giving. It's a foreshadow of the message that the Messiah is going to bring when he comes. So this picture that John is giving is of the harvest being gathered in, because once it's gathered in, it becomes more useful. The picture that is used is of a winnowing fork. I described a sheep that's used to toss it up. People would use a fork, which was like a big garden fork, and they would use it to toss the wheat up, and then the wheat would fall down and the chaff would blow away. And the heavy grain falling down, there's a sense of separating what's useful from what isn't useful. Jesus is looking for people who will be useful in his kingdom. This is why discipleship is so important, because when we come into a relationship with Jesus, we're called to be disciples. We're not just called to tick a box. We're actually called to whole life discipleship, where we die to ourselves, die to our old way of lives, and live a new life in Jesus Christ. And discipleship is about learning how to live that life that we were designed to always have, how to live the life that we were intended to, and how to be the people that we were designed to be. When we're born again and we surrender our life and we're committed and we become filled with the Holy Spirit, we begin to get a right heart and a right relationship. And that begins to separate out in our life, and it should separate out in our life, those things that spoil and mar, the sin that stops us from being useful. There's a challenge in here for us as believers. There's a challenge about whether those bits of our life that are not useful, we're allowing the refiner's fire to burn those up and consume them and remove them. So that if we're tested and we're sifted, what will be found? If we're tested and sifted, that winnowing fork was to throw us up in the air, what would land? Would we land with the chaff, or would we land with the grain? Those bits of our life, are we more grain than chaff, or more chaff than grain? Many people I observe within church who prayed a prayer, their lives are still rooted in living life for themselves rather than living life for Jesus Christ. And there's many people who are not living as disciples. They've prayed a prayer, but actually their lives are a long way away from living in relationship with Jesus Christ. And we're called to a continual process, a continual journey, a continual surrendering ourselves on a daily basis of coming and surrendering our lives and saying, Jesus, I want to walk with you, I want to be with you, I want to live for you. And I would suggest to you that if our lives are being lived primarily for ourselves and not for the purposes of God, then actually we're living as chaff and not as grain. What about you? If you were to be tested, what would be found in your life?